Birshut Mara Rabotai. This week's parasha, we're going to talk about Bezrat Hashem. I want to split today's lecture into drash, a little bit about the parasha. And trust me, this week's parasha, it seems like it's all about Kohanim. But there is a lot of lessons to be learned for ourselves. In the second half, Bezrat Hashem, I want to talk a little bit about halachot. Because it says in the book Sharei Kedusha of Chaim Vital, he was Syrian, by the way.
Really?
His real last name was Calabresi.
You know he was the Gildo of Rabbi Akiva?
Yes. And he says over there in Sharei Kedusha, all the mitzvot are great. You can never really put two mitzvot on a scale. But he said if there is one mitzvah, that if a person knew the secret, the power, the love that Hashem has for that mitzvah, he would run after it like he would run after oxygen. And that, he said, is la'achzir anashim b'tshuva.
Wow.
To bring people closer to Hashem. And when we think of people who bring people closer to Hashem, we think about people with big names, world-renowned speakers, Rav Amnon Yitzchak. We think about, Rav Reuven Elbaz. We think about Rav Mizrahi, right now he's big. We think about Rabbi Wallerstein, he's big in New York. We think about people with big names. What do? They go out to the masses. They find people who don't know anything. Mamash, in deep. They put their hand out there and they pick them up. But the Shulchan Aruch writes that la'achzir anashim b'tshuva doesn't mean to take a person who's totally at the extreme level of doesn't know anything and bring him to Hashem. Even a Haredi Jew, a person who's been religious his whole life. Let's say he has a problem. What's his problem? He doesn't pray 3 tefillot a day. He prays shacharit in the morning, he puts on tefillin, and that's it. Doesn't pray mincha, doesn't pray aravit. If you go to this Haredi with peot and a beard, and you convince him to pray mincha and aravit every single day, you made him closer to Hashem. It's as if those rabbis took a person at a total extreme. Who could compare mitzvot? Who could do that? So even if I tell you, Rabbotai, one mitzvah today, just one, that you guys don't do, maybe you guys do it, I don't know, and I convince you to keep that mitzvah, I just was mekayim mitzvah machzir anashim b'tshuva. For example, Rav Ovadia Yosef, Zecher Tzedek Livracha, in his book Yabia Omer Chelek Chet, I apologize, Chelek Orach Chaim, he writes over there, a question: is a person allowed to speak in the bathroom? Speak in the bathroom, what could be the problem? Today, everybody has a telephone, cellular phone, iPhone, Galaxies, whatever smartphone you got. Now, that's not even to talk, if a person has internet on his phone, there are some rabbis who say it's a problem to go inside the bathroom with your iPhone that has internet. Why? It's a problem of yichud, they say. What's the yichud? Person is alone in the bathroom, he has a phone, who knows what he's going on it? That's why they say you have to put a guard on your phone. I'm not even talking about that. That could be abizrayu da'arayot. What does that mean? There's 3 mitzvot in the Torah. If a goy comes to you and says, I'm going to kill you or you're going to do this, you have to say, I'm willing to give my life up to Kiddush Hashem. One of that is, chas v'shalom, if a goy tells another Jew, and this happened in the Holocaust, to kill another Jew. The Jew has to say, I'm willing to give up my life, not to kill another Jew. Second thing is avodah zarah. What's avodah zarah? Serve a different God. A person has to be able to give up their life and not to serve avodah zarah. And the third one is gilui arayot. Gilui arayot is chas v'shalom, if a person tells a man, I want you to do a sin with this married woman. Chas v'shalom. Lo aleinu v'lo am Yisrael. A person should say, I'm willing to give up my life not to do it. There are people today that for money, they will do anything. Workplaces, this is called American culture. We have to know that we Yehudim, and this is going to be in this week's parasha, and I'm going to get to it B'ezrat Hashem if I have time. Our whole nation is based on one thing. And this doesn't just deal with women. Kol kvoda bat melech penima. Every night Shabbat night, Friday night, we go to the Shabbat table and we sing Eshet Chayil. What do we say at the end? Sheker achen vehevel hayofi isha yirat Adonai titalal. What does that mean? Outside beauty, materialistic beauty, it's only lasts for a couple of seconds. What really matters is Isha Yirat Hashem. What does that mean, Isha Yirat Hashem? I want to explain to you guys with one small story. This is a true story. It's written in the book Aleinu L'Shabeach, Rabbi Zilberstein, Parashat Emor. There was a Rosh Yeshiva that was passing by a house in a remote place in Israel. What do you mean a remote place in Israel? We think, when we think of Israel, Tel Aviv, Yerushalayim, cities, Cholon, but there are places out there like Kriyat Shmona. All the way out there, to get to work, people have to drive an hour, maybe even 2. So there was a city, I don't remember the city, and there was a family over there, and over there, to own a car, you must. You don't have a car, forget about taking your kids to school, forget about going shopping, forget about a lot of stuff. So this family, couple of kids, they had a minivan. And unfortunately, Am Yisrael Kuranu Kedoshim, but there was, today in Israel you see a lot that they hire Goyim. And Karochi, the family one day wakes up, the car, kaput, stolen. How are they gonna take the kids to school? How are they gonna go shopping? They live in the kfar. It's not a kfar, but let's say it's like a kfar. The Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva in that city was passing by the house at that time, and he said, when I heard what the mother was saying to the kids at that moment, when they found out that the car was stolen, he said it brought tears to my eyes. He said that he heard the mother tell the kids, they were crying. Because the kids want to go to school, they want to play with their friends. He said to the kids, she said to the kids, Yeladim, my children, you think that we own the car. We never owned that car. Hashem let us borrow it. It happened to be that today Hashem decided that he wants the car back. And he took the car back. For example, some of us play the lottery. Halachically speaking, if you lived in Israel today, you're not allowed to play the lottery. It's gambling. Why? A bunch of Jews get together, they put money into the pot. Asur, lefi Sfaradim, if you don't have another job, you're pasul le'edut midoraita. Midrabanan, I'm sorry. It's safek gezel. In America, there's more room to be meker. Why? Because mostly goyim play. So you're not taking the other Jews' money. Why aren't you allowed to gamble? I want to ask you a question. What's the problem? I want to go to Atlantic City with my friends, have a good weekend, have some fun. Not Las Vegas. Las Vegas, that's Sodom V'Amorah. Atlantic City is also Sodom V'Amorah. But it's the lesser evil. You go with your friends to Atlantic City and you play the roulette. You put the thing and you win. And you win. And you blackjack. And you're winning. What's the problem? What are you doing wrong? You did an Averah, you killed somebody, you stole You know what the Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin said? When you play with another Jew gambling, let's say you play poker, the Jew puts in $10,000, your friend, and you put in $10,000. When he puts the $10,000 inside the pot, he's putting that in because he thinks he's gonna win. He doesn't think that you're gonna win, so when you actually win, and you take his money, he doesn't really want to give it to you. So you're avak gezel. You are a gazlan. Avak gazlan. That's called avak gezel.
Nobody forced him to play though.
That's true, but he did. So you're pasul le'edut, says the Rambam. But if you play with a goy, since there is no din of gezel with a goy in that sense, because it's only avak gezel, you would be kasher le'edut. But only in America, but in Israel this doesn't work. So let's say you play the lottery in America, not in Israel. You buy a ticket and you win $1 million. Oh, wow. Today $1 million is what? It's a house. In Jamaica States, no. Also over here.
Fresh Meadows also.
Fresh Meadows too. You win $1 million. And you're walking home and you have to cross a bridge. And suddenly, and you have a handful of cash, all hundreds. Suddenly a big wind comes and $900,000 to the sea. Salamat.
But.
And all that's left in your hand is $100,000. Are you gonna feel bad or good?
Good. Mad.
Listen, you started off with $0 and at least you ended up with $100,000. At least you got $100,000.
But you lost 900.
That it wasn't really yours. You won it. You understand? Oh, when we lose something from Hashem, we lost $900,000. But we have to understand we still have $100,000 in our hands. You're still here. You're still breathing. You have a family. You have kids. You live a life. So the mother was telling the kids, this what Hashem gave us, He was lending it to us. We were borrowing it from Him. Now that it's gone, do we have a right to say to Hashem, give it back to me? It wasn't ours to begin with. It wasn't ours to begin with. So back to what we were saying before. There is a halacha. Rabbi brings down Yabia Omer. Chelik Chet, Chelik Orachaim. Is a person allowed to speak in the bathroom?
No.
Why am I bringing this up? Listen, today, people, like Rabbi brings down in his book, Tarat Habayit, in the beginning, he says, unfortunately, many people don't know many halachot. Neda, Shabbat. They say, there's a saying, everybody keeps Shabbat today by mistake. Because there's so many halachot for Shabbat, so many, as technology goes up. Not long ago, there was a whole big argument. They made something called a kosher switch. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
It went up, then it died down right away. Why? The guy made it. He got haskamot from rabbis, and then suddenly, when it was about to be for production, and I know the people who put money for it, they put over $300,000. Suddenly, the whole world gets up. Chilul Shabbat. Hey, yes, haskamot. This. Suddenly becomes Chilul Shabbat. Did you guys know that before my time, before I was even born to this world, they came out with something called a timer? You guys know the timer? It's right here. It's in everybody's house. Do you know when they also came out with the timer, the whole world said it's Chilul Shabbat? Today, everybody has a timer in his house. Because at the end of the day, Hashem knows whatever is mutar, it's mutar. I don't know whatever is going to do with this kosher switch. I'm not somebody who could say anything about this. But only time will tell. But that's the big stuff, you know? Shabbat, Neda, Yom Tov, Sukkot, Shavuot. Soon Shavuot is coming up, Rabotai. B'Shat Vah Muslechet. We're getting the Torah. Yesterday was how many days of the Omer? 25. That means you have another 24. And that's it, you get the Torah. Every year we get a Torah from again. And it says, Rabbi says in his book, Hashem doesn't pick on a person for the big averot and mitzvot. Hashem picks a person on the small stuff. How do we know that? From David HaMelech. David HaMelech said, Avon akevai yisubeni. The small averot, the ones by the ankles, the one that everybody steps on every day, that's the stuff that gets a guy at the end. That's the stuff. And a person shouldn't think, and I also wanted to mention this week's parasha. I'm going to get back to this. This week's parasha talks about Kohanim in a very big sense. And it says over there, a Kohen is not allowed to marry a divorced woman, a Zonah, a widow, he's allowed to marry. A Zonah is not allowed to marry, and a Halala. Three things. What's a halala? We're going to explain all three of them. Because unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, I don't know how to explain this, in the Bukharian community, may Hashem bless us till the times of Mashiach, we restrict ourselves on some things, but at the same time we're mekel on many other things. A kohen that marries a woman that's been around, and then he marries her, and then he has a child. What's that child called?
Mamzer.
Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. Chas v'shalom. That child is a kohen. Kohen kasher. When is the child a halal? What's a halal? It's a kohen that can't work in the Beit HaMikdash. When that woman was with a man that she wasn't allowed to be with from the Torah. That means if she was with a goy, if she was with, for example, a ger mitzri, an Egyptian convert, if she was with a ger Ammoni or Moavi, anything that's isur aseh, lo ta'aseh, isur karet, if she's with those men, then if she marries a kohen, he becomes a halal unless he divorces her, and the child are halalim. Now I want to ask you guys a question. He has a child, it's a baby girl. This baby girl is what? A halal, halala. Now she marries a Jewish man, Yisrael, and they have a baby. What's the baby's status? Yisrael kasher. He doesn't have a status of halal, not kohen, not levi. Yisrael kasher. What did Bukharians think? May Hashem bless us. Any woman that was with a man before marriage and she married a kohen, the childs are psulim. So what do? They thought they're smart. We decide to take ourselves out of the kihuna, they said. We're not kohanim anymore. Our family are not kohanim. That's the biggest bluff I ever heard in history. Once you're born as a kohen, you can never leave the kohenship. Never. You can't say, good morning, I decide not to be a kohen. This isn't some kind of right that you decide to take upon yourself. This is a birthright. It's like a person who was born to a Jewish mother, his mom is Jewish, and he decides chas v'shalom to convert to a different religion. And one day he wakes up, he wears a cross, and he's a Notzri, chas v'shalom. Is he a Notzri?
No, Jew.
He's a Jew. Same thing with this kohen. A kohen can say, I take myself out of the kohenship. That's a regular kohen. Now, let's say she doesn't know who she was with. She went to New York City, and she went to a club, and she drank a little too much, or they drugged her, which happens a lot. She wakes up the next morning, and mazal tov. She doesn't know who she was with. And then she decides to become religious, and now she gets engaged with the kohen. And they go to the rabbi and they tell the rabbi, we want to get married. Are they allowed to get married or no?
Yeah.
She doesn't know who she was with.
No.
So the Rambam says, in this case you need Bari and Trei Rube. There's many Rishonim that fight over this case. It's a very, very big machloket. Very big machloket. I'm just going to tell you the Rambam. The Rambam is machmir. He's stringent. He said in this case, the woman has to say that she was in a place where there's most Jews. That means she went to a club, Hanukkah club. Like today they have Hanukkah party, Purim parties. And most of the people that pass by the city or that place are Jews. If most of that place was Jews and most of the people who pass by are Jews, even though she doesn't know who she was with, we could continue. But if she doesn't know, and she married a Kohen, according to the Rambam, the child is a halal in that case. And he's pasul from Kiuna. So there's a lot of cases. And I want to ask you guys another question. Halachically speaking, you should know one thing. A rabbi who gets people married, he has to know a lot of laws. It's not just he went to yeshiva from he was a kid and suddenly decides to marry off people and make $500 every week. Doesn't work like that. Let's say a couple, they decide to get married. And this isn't his first marriage. It's not his first marriage. And she herself This isn't the first man she was with. How many days do we say Sheva brachot?
One day.
1 day, that's it. However, does the rabbi have the right to ask the girl whether she was around or not? The answer is no. If the girl comes in, she's a religious girl, and everything is modest and nice, she has a kosher status. And we don't have to ask against her status. Therefore, if the rabbi, if he says 7 days Sheva brachot, he doesn't say God's name in vain. You understand? How strong is a kosher status? And how do we make a kosher status? That's in this week's parasha.
Wait, does it matter Kohen, not Kohen?
We're talking about regular Yisrael. Kohen, he has to ask. Why? Because if a Kohen marries a woman that he's not allowed to marry, the rabbi just married off and made a pasul Yisrael. He made a halal. And according to most achronim, when Mashiach is gonna come, he's gonna pick out who's all the halals. The mamzerim that are not known to the Jewish people, let's say a person is walking in the street, he's a mamzer, but nobody knows he's a mamzer. When Eliyahu Navi is gonna come, he's not gonna tell people he's a mamzer. He's gonna leave him as a kosher Jew. But a halal, according to most achronim, he's gonna say he's a halal, he's not a halal. This is a kosher Kohen, it's pasul Kohen. Therefore, a Masader Kedushin has to know who he's marrying off, if it's a Kohen. You understand? But a Mamzer, if it's not known to the Jewish people, the person who knows doesn't have a right to say, and the Masader Kedushin doesn't have to ask. There's many halachot, Rabotai. That's why to be a Dayan, a Jewish judge, is not some small thing. Rabbis today, people take them lightly, like Rabbi Ben Chaim, Yitzhak Yisraeli. These are geniuses, Rabotai. These are real Dayanim, Jewish judges. And they have a right to make a person, to make their status. If he's a kosher Jew, non-kosher Jew, it's amazing. For example, Bukharian Jews. When we used to live in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, all these different cities, unfortunately, we didn't, at one point, because of communism, we didn't know so many halachot. Unfortunately. So what happened? When they used to marry off a boy and a girl together, who used to be present at the wedding? Only family. Only family. And the witnesses was usually an uncle or a cousin. What happens? The whole wedding, you could throw it in the pach. She's like a pnuya. Now what happens now if this girl goes and cheats on her husband and has a baby? Is the child a mamzer or no? No. Why? Because the witnesses that were at the wedding were not kosher. And there goes the whole wedding. Understand? So it could be a plus, and it could be a minus. Therefore they say, I heard in the name of Rav Bar Shalom, he said in the name of Rav Boaron, one of the big Dayanim in Israel, that when a Bukharian comes to his Beit Din to say if he's a mamzer or not, it takes him 5 minutes to make him a kosher Jew. Right away he asks, who was the witnesses in your parents' wedding? Oh, he was his uncle? Oh, he was his cousin? Halach, he's kosher Jew. So it's a plus and a minus. At the other hand though, in our generation, we have no right to say that we don't know these halachot. Baruch Hashem, today we have Talmidei Chachamim, we have kollels, we have a Bet Knesset in every other block. Ken Yirbu. We're still waiting for a big nice yeshiva somewhere here. And over here soon to be, huh? And so therefore a person doesn't have a right to say, I don't know. I don't want to know. But at the same time, we have to know how to give the person the benefit of the doubt. Why? This is what I wanted to get to. Many Jews think that if a Kohen marries a widow, the child is pasul. Le Kohen, he's a halal. That's a total fallacy. It's totally not true. A Kohen is allowed to marry a widow. Mutar. But a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow.
But we don't have Kohen Gadol.
That's true. But listen to the point. The Gemara says, wait a second. Well, we're trying to make statuses over here make this Kohen better than this Kohen. How come this Kohen, they're both sons of Aharon, how come this Kohen is allowed to marry a widow and this Kohen is not allowed to marry a widow? So the Tosfot bring down, says we're afraid. What are we afraid of? One time a year, the Kohen Gadol goes inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies, and that's on Yom Kippur. We're afraid that the Kohen Gadol has a neighbor, and he has a very beautiful wife. And she's so beautiful that when he's gonna go inside the Holy of Holies and say Hashem's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, he's gonna think in his mind, may her husband die, and may I marry her, his wife, his widow. And Hashem is gonna make it come true. Because when he says Hashem's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, that's the Sheva Meforash. That's Hashem's ineffable name. Shem HaMeforash. And Hashem is gonna make it come true. And then what he's gonna do, he's gonna come out of the Kodesh HaKodashim, spakoina, clean, nice. What did I do? I didn't do anything. And he's gonna marry the widow. So the Tosfot says, so we shouldn't have a suspicion on the Kohen Gadol that he steals his neighbor's wife by using the Shem Meforash. In the Holy of Holies, the Torah said a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. So that leaves only one thing. A Kohen Gadol has to marry a mamash, a girl that's never touched. Never been touched. So the question's been asked. Rabotai, let's be real for 1 second. You know what a Kohen Gadol is? Do you know what a Kohen Gadol is? A Kohen Gadol, he is the only person in Am Yisrael that has a right once a year to go inside the Holy of Holies. And do you know what he sees there?
God.
You can't see God, but you could be in his presence. You could be in his presence, and if, chas v'shalom, the Kohen Gadol would think just for 1 minute, for example, for 1 second, he would think, how am I gonna make parnasa this year? How is my son doing in school? How is this? How is that? At that second, the Midat Hadin would catch him, he would die. So how you, Tosfot, Rabbeinu Tosfot say that he would even have a sliver in his mind, a thought, to kill his neighbor and take his wife? How could that even happen? How could he even dare to go inside there with that thought?
But Hashem make
He would
it
die.
come true.
He would die at that second. He would die at that second. There's no doubt in my mind.
That's what I
There's no doubt in everybody's mind he would die at that second. So how could you say that he would have that thought? And I want to tell you guys a story. In the time of the second Beit HaMikdash, when the Romans and the Greeks ruled over Am Yisrael, there was a Kohen Gadol that served, I believe, for over, if I'm not mistaken, how much? 80 years. No. Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Do you know, Rabotai, 80 years, the guy walked in and out of the Holy of Holies, and not 1 year did something happen to him. Do you know what it is to go 80 years inside Kodesh HaKodashim, Rabotai? Imagine you saw the Baba Sali right now. How would we feel? Imagine the Baba Sali appeared in this room right now. Some people would faint. Some people would go crazy. Some people would think they're hallucinating. Imagine Moshe Rabbeinu walks inside that room right now. Imagine Eliyahu Hanavi appears right now in front of us. What would happen? Rabotai, when the brothers of Yosef HaTzadik, when Yosef just said, Ani Yosef, I'm Joseph, what happened to them?
They died.
The Midrash said they died. They died from shame.
You have to bring him back.
And Har Sinai, Hashem just said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Neshama comes out. Lo yeh Elokim acharim al panai. Neshama comes out, boom, boom. The Kohen Gadol, walked inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim. I just want to let you understand one thing. He walked inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim for 80 years. And then he walked out with not a blister. You know how holy this man was? Yochanan Kohen Gadol. What happened to him at the end? He became a tzduki. What is a tzduki? He's a man that doesn't believe in the oral Torah. Gemara doesn't exist. Mishnah doesn't exist. Kabbalah doesn't exist. All this thing, imagine 80 years to the garbage. Chas v'shalom. Why? How is it possible? Do you know the Gemara in Masechet Yomah said, the people in the time of the second Beit HaMikdash were so fearful that the Kohen Gadol would die during the Yom Kippur, they used to put a metal chain around him, and they used to wait. If he was in there for too long, they used to take him out, and he used to be dead. 1 year, I believe, they went through like 20 Kohanim. Each one died, because they used to have Kohanim waiting on the list. Died, next, died, next, died, next, died. This guy went in for 80 years, more than Shimon HaTzadik. You guys know what Shimon HaTzadik is, right?
No.
The Pirkei Avot says, Ethics of Our Father, the world stands on 3 things. On the Torah, Gimlut Chasadim, and on Avodah, which is Tefillah. Shimon HaTzadik said that. This man, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, went inside the Kodesh HaKodashim for 80 years. I can't stress that enough. How did he become a tzduki? A tzduki is like an atheist. They don't believe in mikveh. Do you know the mikveh we have right now? Women have to go to the mikveh, correct or not? Yeah. If a woman doesn't go to the mikveh and she's with her husband, the husband is over Isur Karet. That means his neshama gets cut off from the Jewish people. Now there's many laws to Ilchot Neda, and there's many laws to Ilchot of mikveh. For example, a woman has to count non-clean days and clean days. Many women think after she finishes counting the non-clean days, which is usually 4 or 5 days, she does something called Hefsek Tahara. What's Hefsek Tahara? Before sunset, she takes a ed. Maze ed? It's a cloth, special cloth. She has to check it first. It's clean. And then she checks herself. If it's clean, Chazak Baruch, she starts counting her 7 clean days. If it's not clean, okay, next day try her luck. Now, many women make the mistake, they think that the day that they checked Hefsek Tahara counts as a clean day. So instead of waiting 7 clean days, they wait 6 clean days. And their husbands, Bar Minan, by mistake, of course, they're with a Isur Karet. By mistake, but they did. So it's very important that every man, not just a woman, it's not enough to tell your wives go to Kala classes and teach them. It's not enough. It's very important that the men also learn Hilchot Nida. For example, a woman has 3 times in the month. Every woman today is most likely is Veset She'eino Kavua. Right now in Kolel, Baruch Hashem, we're learning Hilchot Nida inside the Shulchan Aruch Tur Bet Yosef. There's something called Veset Shekavua, Veset She'eino Kavua. What's Veset Shekavua? Veset Shekavua means a woman knows Aleph, the first day of the month, she's gonna get it. Most women today can't tell that. Why? The nature of the bodies change. So usually either she gets it 27 days, 25 days, 26. Some women get it 30 days, every 30 days. Now, based on what she got, let's say this month she got it on the 27th day. She has to take a calendar and mark on the calendar 27th day of the month of Nisan. And she has to mark when she got it, in the morning or in the night. Then what does she do? And I think that the husband should do it with his wife every single month. She has to now go to the next month and mark off 3 dates, exit out. When is it likely that she'll get it? How does she do that? She has to count, number 1, 30 days from the day that she got it and mark it off on the calendar. Then she has to count how many days? 2. She has to count how many days did it take her to get it? So if it was 27 days, she counts now 27 days and X's it. Ma. זה משתנה. That's why I said she has to count from the last time. And then the third day she counts, let's say she got it Bet Nisan. She has to now X off Bet ER. Those 3 days, on the time that she got it, whether it be day or night, she has to make sure to stay away from her husband. Because maybe she'll get it in those days and she's considered Vesicheno Kavua. No, but there's another halakha though. The ona before, 12 hours before, she has to make sure not to be with her husband. Why? Because the rabbi said we're afraid that during that day, she might get it too. Now, Rabotai, how many people know that? How many people mark that off on their calendar? And chas v'shalom, how many times does it happen that a man is with his wife and suddenly she's like, oops, I got it. In the middle. What does he do? Does he come out be'ever chai, ever met? You have to see, they know, because I said it a lot in the shul. They have to make sure, he has to make sure he's inside until the ever dies, and then he has to come out. That doesn't mean he didn't do Isur Karet. He did Isur Karet, but in a very low level. He still has to do Teshuvah. Now, Rabotai, how many people don't know this halakha? A man, wait a second. A man is with his wife for the first time. It's the wedding night. And she sees blood. It's different, but the Chachamim hechmiru al zeh. Chachamim, not as much as a regular Neda, she waits till the bleeding stops, and then she counts 7 clean days. It doesn't mean just because it didn't come from the uterus, that she's not tameh. She's tameh. How many people make that mistake? That's why it's important that not only the women learn halachot nida, that the men are kovea halachot. And it says in Pirkei Avot, kinin upitchai nida hen gufei halachot. The rabbis in the ethics of our father write, you guys want to know what the most important halachot are? Learn hilchot nida. You guys want to know what the main stuff is? Hilchot nida. Now back to Yochanan Kohen Gadol. How did he become an atheist? And I call the Tzduki an atheist. After 80 years of seeing Hashem, Rabotai. 80 years. The Jews were in the desert for 40 years. They saw God how many times? Once on Har Sinai. Okay, I understand. They saw once. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. What do you say? Give them the benefit of the doubt or not? I give them. How can I give Yochanan Kohen Gadol the benefit of the doubt? 80 years he was inside the Beit HaMikdash.
When did he become a Tzduki?
At the end.
Year?
At the end.
Or 60th year or 70th?
At the end.
And then he wasn't Kohen Gadol anymore?
No, he was. He was.
So he wasn't Kohen Gadol and he wasn't Tzduki at the same time?
The Gemara says that he became a Tzeduki and he started to change stuff up. There's a machloket in Seder Adorot, was he Yanai HaMelech or not? Depending if he was Yanai HaMelech or not, we could know whether he continued being Kohen Gadol or not. Some historians say it can't be he was Yanai HaMelech, because we know he was a Hashmonai, he was Hasmonean, and they were the kings, and therefore he wasn't Kohen Gadol anymore, because the times just don't match. Some people hold he was Yanai HaMelech, but that's already an argument for historians. I don't want to get into it. I just want to make one point. Even though, Rabotai, a person is as holy as a Kohen Gadol, even though he seems Hashem's present, even though a person learns in Kollel, even though he's inside the Beit HaMidrash every day, even though he prays 3 times a day, wears tefillin, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, and even Shimushai Rabbah, even though he goes to the mikveh, he can never say that I'm immune to the dangers of the outside world. A person is never immune to the dangers of the outside world. You could be a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. But at the end, the Satan will get you. Chas v'shalom. At the end, he's going to get you. And I want to tell you one thing. The Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah brings a different story. Of a man called Eliezer ben Durdiyah. Who is this Eliezer ben Durdiyah? The Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah says there was a man, good-looking chap, Today he would be one of those guys who live in a penthouse in Manhattan on the 80th floor with, you know, they have these elevators for cars now.
Oh yeah.
You drive the car into the building and the elevator takes the car up. Super. And then he was always well dressed, clean shaven, nice, well built, works out 10 hours a day. And what does he do for the rest of the hours of the day? I don't want to say. The Gemara says there wasn't a, I don't want to say the word, in the world that he wasn't with. The guy probably had more STDs than you, Hefner, Bar Minan. Than Bill Cosby, he probably had more. He was with every woman in the world that sells herself. That's what the Gemara says. Look, Masechet Avodah Zarah. But there was one that he wasn't with. The Madame. The Madame of all Madames. He had to cross 7 rivers to get to her. In the Greek islands. Not just in any regular island. In the Greek islands. And to get her for one night, he had to bring a huge amount of money with him. He finally crossed the 7 rivers. He got to her. And he put the money next in front of her. I have 24 hours. She said, you do? I do. And they were together. In the middle, I'm not gonna say what happened. From the heat and from the thing, she released gas. And she looks back at him and she tells him, you see the gas that went out for me? It doesn't come back. She said, you? God will never get you back. You're like that thing that left me right now. You're never gonna come back to God. She told him. First of all, I want to ask you a question. What right does this, Avi Avota Tum'ah, Plonit Eshet Samechmem, has a right to tell a Jew, no matter how Rasha he is, God will never take you back. He heard that, he became Deoneh. The Gemara says he went to the sun, he went to the moon, he went to the rivers, help me come back to God. At the end, everybody said, you're on your own, buddy. The Gemara says he put his head between his birkaim. He cried so much that his soul left his body. And a herald came out from heaven and said, Rabbi Eliezer ben Durdiya, Muzman, is invited. He got a special invitation. L'chaye olam haba. The Ariya Kadosh says there's 3 kinds of olam haba. Kol Yisrael yeshem cherek olam haba. There's another one I forget, and then there is Muzman l'chaye olam haba. Muzman l'chaye olam haba is the highest level. That's achar elif hashvi'i afilu. And you know what the Rashash writes in Nahar Shalom? The soul of Yochanan Kohen Gadol and Eliezer ben Durdiya switched at that moment. That 80 years that Yochanan Kohen Gadol went inside the Kodesh HaKodashim went to Eliezer ben Durdiya. All his mitzvot went to him. And all the averot of Eliezer ben Durdiya went to Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Why? Haba letameh mesayin lo. One who wants to make himself tameh, God says, no problem, all the paths are open for you. You want to be tameh? I'm not going to stop you. Go be tameh, you have free will. Do whatever you want. I'm going to give you signs during the way. How many times a person wants to do an avera, and I'm sure everybody experienced this in some certain level. Suddenly he gets a phone call right before he's about to do the avera. That's a sign from God. God is saying, I'm giving you another second to think. Think before you do it. Then you close the phone. Let's do it. Then suddenly another thing happens. Hashem says, second warning. I'm watching you. I'm giving you another second to think. And sometimes it works. Yosef HaTzadik, the Midrash says, he was so sick of Eshet Potifar. Her name was Zulaycho, by the way. She was not Bukharian. She was Egyptian. He was so sick of her already, he's like, Gehenom, no Gehenom, holech. Ani holech ad hasof. Hashem didn't leave him like that. He gave him one more chance. He put his father's face in the mirror. Some say his father's face, some say his mother's face. He saw the face, he's like, I'm not gonna do it. He said, I don't care, I'm gonna be in jail for 12 years. I'm not gonna do it. She should take me. And Potiphar knew what his wife did. Why? The Midrash says, to make it still look real, she took his shirt, she took the white of the egg. You know when a woman makes scrambled egg, you have the white of the egg, it looks very similar to a man's zera. And she put it all over the cloth. She told her husband, look what he was about to do to me. He was so excited, look what he did. He wet himself. You know what Potiphar did? To see if she was right or not. He took fire and he fried it. That's what the Midrash says. If it was eggs, it would fry. If it wasn't, it would stay wet. But still he put him in jail. Why? He said, Ma anashim yagidu, what are people gonna say? The general of the Mitzrayim, his wife is doing shtuyot with the stable boy? With the Eved. Not just the Eved, Eved Ivri. The Hebrew slave. And he put him in jail for 12 years. And I want to tell you guys one thing. If your brothers, chas v'shalom, put you in jail for 12 years, and then they come to see you, and they ask you for food, what would you do to them? Or savo. I don't care if he's your brother from your mother or your father. You would put him in jail not just for 12 years, for 24 years. But you know what Yosef HaTzadik did? He opened up a table. HaBechor kibchorato. HaTzair kitzirato. 5 types of food. Moroccan, Iraqi, Mitzri, Bavli, Parsi, and on top dessert Bukhari. All the foods in the world. He put their money back in their sack. Now we know how come we say Yosef HaTzadik. On Sukkot we have 7 fathers. Avraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef. Why Yosef? Why not Yehuda? Yehuda was ready to give his life, his olam haba, for his brother Binyamin. Would you give your olam haba for your friend? He's told his father, I don't bring him back. You could send me to Kafakela, send me to hell. I give away all my olam haba. He shook hands with his father. The older brother, Reuven, told his father, you could kill my 2 sons if I don't bring your son back, Benjamin. And Benjamin wasn't a young boy. He was 30-something years old. He could take care of himself. Reuven said, I don't bring back your son, Binyamin. Kill my 2 sons. Yaakov said, this guy's a fool. My grandchildren are my children. So Yudah gets up and says, if I don't bring Binyamin back, I'm giving you my olam haba. Yaakov said, oh yeah? You're going to give me your olam haba? Take Binyamin. Take him with you. I think that's a big sacrifice. This guy was about to give up everything. He gave up what? Materialism. At the end, what did he become? The viceroy of Egypt. But no. Yosef HaTzadik. He is the tzaddik. And that's what we say by Eliezer ben Durdiya and Yochanan Kohen Gadol. You could live your whole life, 80 years as a Kohen Gadol in Kodesh HaKodashim. But even you can't marry a widow. Why? Hashem says, even you the Satan could get. Even you might want to marry your neighbor's wife. Don't think just because you're a Kohen Gadol, you're free of sin. Don't think so. Even you have a Satan. Only 5 people never sinned. But you're not one of them. And therefore you have to be on constant vigilance. And I know, Rabotai, it's very hard to believe this, but it's true. A guy came to our kollel today, a Talmid Chacham. We were learning Hilchot Neda. And he was telling to me, he said, I know Talmidei Chachamim, Charedim, not Talmidei, Charedim, Charedi, religious people. While the wife is counting 7 clean days, he says to her, either we're going to be together, or I'm going to go find myself something else. And she rathers do the sin with her than outside. And he does the sin, karet. Charedi people, it's true. I've heard many cases like this. The guy can't wait 7 clean days. But if we go out there, and he could wear tefillin every day, he could go to the mikveh, it doesn't matter. But if you don't constantly remind the people the importance of the mitzvot, the punishment of the averot, the Satan could get them. Because if the Kohen Gadol could say Hashem's name and think about his neighbor's wife, and if the Kohen Gadol could go for 80 years inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim and lose everything, to who? Eliezer ben Durdiya. And he could get everything. It could happen to every one of us. What was the story of Yoshka, Rabotai? What was the story of Yoshka?
He thought he was from the same area as David Miller.
That's true. But what happened to him? The Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin writes. Yoshka was a student of Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya. You know who Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya was? Rabbi Akiva is like this next to Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya. He's one of the Zugot. Zugot.
What is Zugot?
Zugot means before the Torah became machloket, Gemara, this rabbi says this rabbi says that, there was a time there was no machloket. Every rabbi agreed with one another. One of those people's time was Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya. There was a clear masoret. We didn't forget anything. Once we started to forget, and then all the machloket came out, tameh, tahor, this, that. He had a student. His name was Yehoshua. Joshua. That was his name. One time they were at an inn. Hotel. And the innkeeper's wife, she was serving them delicious cakes. And Yehoshua told his Rebbe, Yehoshua ben Prachya, look how beautiful her eyes are. What did the Rebbe do? He took 300 shofarot, he blew them, and he put him in excommunication. Now, today we look at, let's say you were a student of Rabbi Yosef. How would you take that opportunity? Even if he would put you down, throw you out, put you in Nidu, you would always want to come back, right? This Yeshu, they took the hay out of his name. They made it Yeshu. He went to his Rebbe. At that time, to say sorry. He went to say sorry. But that time was Kriyat Shema. And he was saying Shema Yisrael, and we know the halacha is, let's say you're saying Shema Yisrael. And somebody's saying Baruch Hu Hashem Mevorach. Do you answer? No. He's saying Kaddish. Do you answer? No. He's saying you can not let us say anything if you're saying Shema Yisrael. You continue. Now he couldn't answer him, so he told him, wait a second. Let me finish. He was gonna take him back. But he thought he meant like get the out of here. And he went and he started his own religion. Could you imagine? This guy, Yeshu, Yoshka, he could have been a person written in the Gemara. We could have been learning today's halachot. We could have been. But the Satan got him. He thought his Rebbe said, get out. Wait. He didn't want to wait. He had gava inside of him. My Rebbe says, get out? I don't need him. I could start my own religion. And he was very successful. And those people, for 2,000 years, have been slaughtering Jews. Learn a little history. Just in the year 1608, 1609, Chemlanesky's pogroms, they killed over 300,000 Jews. Why? Just because they were Jews. And in Uman, where Rav Nachman of Breslov is buried, there was a big cross. And they told the Jews over there was 400 Jews, either you bow down or we kill you. Every single Jew gave his life up for Kiddush Hashem. Ashrehem Yisrael mi kamocha am nashab Adonai. Every single Jew. And how did they kill them? First they killed the children. Why? So the mothers will be like, don't kill my child, I will convert. But not one did. And then they killed the wives. So the husbands will say, don't touch my wife. And not one husband said anything. Then they killed all the men. And on top of that, Rav Nachman in Breslov said, I smell the smell of Gan Eden in this place. And Rav Shneur Zalman Miladi, the Alter Rebbe says, of Lubavitch, no matter what kind of rasha a Jew is. He could be oved avodah zara, gilui arayot, v'shpichut damim. If a goy comes to him and says, convert or I kill you, every real Jew, no matter how far he is from God, would give his life for the sanctification of God's name. Because the spark of love that we have for Hashem can never be extinguished. Never. And I always say this, I heard this from my Rabbi Melad. He says, the soul of the worst Jew in the world, let's take Tomi Lapid. He was a very anti-Jewish, he was in the Knesset, he wanted to bring pork into Israel. His soul is more holy than the body of the Ben Ish Chai. Why? Because it's a chelek eloka mima'al. It's a fire that can never be extinguished. May Hashem bless us with bracha, hatzlacha, parnasa, yeshuot gedolot. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
What's the story we're talking about?